Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack, and today our guest is Sief Khafagi, and he is an ex-techie turned real estate investor who has helped thousands diversify into real estate after spending nearly 5 years at Facebook, where he built the second largest engineering organization across the world. And he's currently the founder of TechVestor, which helps accredited real estate investors and busy professionals passively invest in the emerging asset class of short-term rentals. So Sief, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Eileen. Thanks so much for having me.
It's funny because I found out that you live in LA. I live in OC, not too far from each other.
Super close. We could have done this in person. Maybe next time.
Next time. So Sief, can you share with us a little bit more about your background and how you got started with real estate?
Yeah, so I living in California back in the day. I was working at Facebook, making a little bit more money than I expected as a single dude working, living in a 4-bedroom house with other Facebookers. And I had more money than I could do anything with, right? Really at the time, right? No kids, really just dove into my work. And taxes in California were a big thing, as they still are. So naturally, I looked at how can I potentially reduce that. I became an LP in a few investments, learned a little bit more about the real estate space. And eventually, over the years at Facebook, I opened up a number of offices. And you stay in a bunch of Airbnbs because when you open up an office, you're not there for like a day, like recruiting or hiring a person or 2 or 10. It's why would someone want to visit Facebook Boston and actually work at Facebook and move to Boston, as an example? And when you think of it like that, we were there for a couple of weeks and we stayed in a bunch of Airbnbs. Sometimes they were really shitty. So we asked ourselves, why couldn't someone build a better experience? Why couldn't someone scale this? Why wasn't this more institutional, like multifamily, which I know you're a big fan of as well? And we navigated that market. We built software for the space of short-term rentals. People loved it, but we weren't solving the pain point that a lot of people had. The main pain point was they didn't want to operate, right? They didn't want to find it, design it, furnish it, run it, stabilize it. So when we finally had that aha moment and launched TechVestor specifically as a real estate syndication, for lack of a better word, it's a fund. We raised our first $7 million in the next 30 days, and we've gone on to raise close to about $50 million now across 2 funds, which our second fund is now open, which really has allowed us to really focus on what we're good at, which is use technology, hire the best people, build the infrastructure, but most importantly, solve the biggest pain point for a lot of LPs, which is time, energy, and know-how, right? Money's usually not the problem. It's usually like the time and the energy and this expertise and expose them to this new asset class.
So how did you start building it up for yourself then? Because you were guests of Airbnbs and then decided to start owning and operating your own Airbnbs, utilizing the and raising money through the fund as well. So how did you start building up that background, that base for you?
Yeah, so Sabrina's my co-founder. Sabrina's owned Airbnbs for quite a while, and we got a chance to get to know each other over the years. And it's been, she always had a knack for design and operation. She worked on Apple's AirPods product line, the very first gen. And I was responsible for building teams at Facebook. So when we would experience and talk about those things collectively together and the pain point of Airbnbs, and the more and more we dove into it, we realized that it was very simple to run and operate, but most people didn't look at it through the lens that we did. Right. Your average Airbnb owner owns a second home who is renting it out occasionally and making a few $100 or maybe even a couple grand in cash flow at best a month, but they're not really systemizing it. They're really not pricing it accurately. They're not running it like a business. So the arbitrage opportunity there was really simple and massive, and no one really wanted to do it at scale because unlike multifamily, it's not like you had economies of scale on a single unit basis. Right. You'd have to find, if you want 35 doors in a single market, you'd have to find 35 properties, right? Very different than multi. And for us, we had that tactical advantage of knowing and understanding how to scale those types of things, both people, technology, and infrastructure. So that's really where we took and leaned on our past experience to kind of dive in. And a lot of it was figuring it out along the way, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not like we walked in with a perfect business plan. I think any syndication, whatever business plan you see, is rarely the one that actually ends up happening.
So how did you merge in the need that you saw and what people were looking for in the Airbnb space? And then especially with your background in technology also, how did you merge those two together to, create what you've established today?
I mean, the first thing is data, right? Like we both come from backgrounds of an unbelievable amount of data. Both Apple and Facebook will, really like knock that into you. So we did a lot of scraping, took a lot of unstructured data from the internet through other data sources that we could find, as well as other private APIs, pulled it in and tried to make sense of it, right? Why are people going to Arizona? Why are people going to Clearwater? Why do people visit Memphis? And then when they visit, what do they want? What does the data tell us? Like, what do the best properties have? Why are they the best properties? Where are they located? Why are they located there? And we answered a lot of questions with data from a quantitative perspective. And then you start building your buy boxes, right? Identifying, okay, in Scottsdale, I need a 4-bedroom with a pool and 2 living rooms on a quarter-acre lot or larger. And I really need to deck out the backyard and target this type of avatar in this little zip code, right? And when you can pinpoint your type of product like that as accurately as I think we can, you window shop, right? It's not like every single product hits the market is a win. And for us, 96% of the time a property hits the market, it sucks. So we're very selective with what we buy and where we buy it and how we operate and scale. And that's why for us, we'll never do probably more than $150 to $250 million a year. Because I think that's, to us, our cap, where I think we can, before we start losing our integrity on the type of quality product we would go down.
So with the short-term rental space, how do you also, because we hear a lot, like with short-term rentals, Airbnb, there's a lot of other options out there as well. There's competitiveness in the space. And then, so what do you do to set yourselves apart from a marketing standpoint to get those bookings and increase the overall business?
Yeah, so a couple things. First and foremost, we understand Airbnb as a product, and because they're a tech company, and Airbnb has a user journey that they want you to take as a user who books on their platform. Very much like Google, when you Google something, where you rank on page 1 or 10, you and I both know that rarely is someone going to make it to page 10. So we understand Airbnb's algorithm and we optimize for where we rank. So getting as many eyes on our properties as much as possible. That's one advantage we have over your typical mom and pop, is understanding that user journey. Secondly, our data tells us in each market what amenities we need to add, how we need to design, and who we're designing for. So we really call this the avatar in each market, right? So if you're designing for a bachelorette group, it's very different if you're designing for a family, as we were kind of talking about our kids earlier, right before we hopped on this. Two very different needs and different avatars for what people are coming in there for. And then when it comes to pricing, we use software, but we also have a human-led team at the end of the day. So our team is arguably one of our biggest advantages. Our head of asset management comes from Vacasa, which is the largest short-term rental property management company in the space. We have a head of data. I don't know if you know many syndication companies and or private equity firms that have a head of data, on their team. And we build tools internally to support those insights in terms of understanding what we do and how we do it, and what price do we charge and what season are we in. Like, I can tell you on any given day how far we are through to our goal of revenue versus how far we are through seasonality, which is a big thing in short-term rentals, right? It's not like multifamily where each month you're hoping to collect the rent because someone's living there. There's a big part in seasonality. When's high season? When's low season? What do you charge? What's booking lead time? You're very much operating more of a business than real estate, if you ask me.
So then for you, as you're building up the short-term rental space, how are you finding the properties, and what are some of the different criteria that you've used the data to establish what that would look like and where you're targeting?
So on a very basic level, we are looking for properties that we can generate a 15 to 23% revenue to purchase price ratio on a gross level. Places that typically are tax friendly, right? Because we always want to make sure we're prioritizing for profit and not just top line. And our software automatically underwrites over 100,000 plus properties a month. Across currently, we're mapping about 250, 260 local markets. And these are markets where our data has told us we should consider looking, where we have an inclination to look, or we have pre-existing other data that supports we should be investing in that area. So before we ever enter a market, we're mapping it for 6 months, 12 months, maybe even longer, really understanding, does the real estate supply that we need to buy in that location, does it come on market enough for us to enter that market? And when it does, what's the purchase price? What's it been selling for? What are the comps? What problems does it have? Like, are people selling those properties right after they buy them, aka indicating it's more of a flip market? All of those insights will help us better understand the next buy, because we're a multi-asset blind fund, right? So when you invest with us, you're investing more in a business strategy, a thesis, right? And, we have some properties when you invest in, whether it's 10 or 100, but we don't know what the next property will be. We don't know where it'll be exactly, right? We have to be able to scale and navigate and operate using data, technology, and of course, the team that we have that ultimately makes decisions.
And so with the technology that you have in place, how have you been able to take that and then incorporate it into your investors' experience and what they would expect coming from a fund like this?
So I think our investors find that with all the advantages we have, technology being one of them, we've been able to drive really great performance, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's what investors expect. We don't wow them with fancy software that they don't need. In fact, most of our investors probably care less about what our software does on the back end. They just hope that it works, right? And I don't blame them for thinking that way. They get curious, we show it to them. That's totally fine, totally fair. But when you comp us to, say, one of the largest property managers in the space, which is professional management, professional pricing, and all those types of things, we're typically driving 71% more revenue, 41% more occupancy. And I think our investors see the performance in those numbers. And, we just passed $1 million in distributions to investors about a year after starting. And that's a big deal, right? Starting from 0 to $1 million to a lot of them in proof of concept. And we've exited 8 assets selectively for about a 42 IRR. All of this is really what they care about, right? I think investors care about the experience. We update them all the time. But I don't think they care about our software. I think they find it as a competitive advantage. They like to hear that we don't license or sell it, right? And it's used proprietarily here. But it's one of many advantages that they optimize for.
Where do you see like the short-term rental space going for you and for your company?
I think we're in like inning 1 or inning 2 of an institutionalized asset class. I think you saw it with storage in the 90s before the dot-com boom, as well as, people who didn't realize they had too much stuff and needed places to store it. In fact, storage was like the laughing stock of what real estate was back in the 90s. People were like, why would you ever need this? Pricing was weird, right? There wasn't dynamic pricing for storage back in the 90s. Today, there's dynamic pricing for storage. I don't know if anyone actually knows that, but people price differently by day, by product, by week, by demand, by supply, right? And you're starting to see that with short-term rental. You're seeing institutions raise hundreds of billions of dollars to get into the single-family space to buy stabilized yield and build to rent. And I think naturally, legacy type capital is chasing yield. But they're chasing stabilized yield. And the early conversations we've had with institutions have been, no one wants to build it. None of them want to build this because it's way too hard, too much sweat equity to go in and do one by one, build these Lego pieces together, but they damn sure want to buy it, right? They're like, if you can build 500 of these stabilized and actually have like financial history, which again, 90% of other moms and pops don't maintain financial history on their properties, right? All of a sudden you have a business that someone else wants to buy. And these institutions, I think, are going to be more than willing to continue that path.
Where are some of the markets that you guys focus on?
We're about split between both metro and destination-like markets. So, we have our city markets like Scottsdale and Memphis and Clearwater. And then you also have like destination beach mountain kind of towns like the Poconos, Panama City Beach, Galena, Illinois, Branson, Missouri, right? Like we're in secondary markets. We don't invest in predominantly primary metros like Los Angeles or San Francisco. The prices don't make sense on your entry point, let alone the regulatory risk, right? So places with high density of people typically do not think that is a good Airbnb type area, in our opinion. Also, you're competing with a lot of hotels, right? Like our average product is like a 4-bedroom and larger with pools and amenities decked out and like custom everything. And that's why we're able to drive a lot of value and ROI for our investors.
At what point, as you've been building up TechVestor and what you're doing in the short-term rental space, did you realize that, hey, instead of having real estate be my side hustle thing that I'm trying to build up, now I want to make this into full-time? And then because you ended up leaving Facebook to do this now full-time, to run your business full-time.
Yeah. So ironically, I left Facebook at probably one of the times that would scare most people the most. It was 9 days before my first son was born. Like my wife was like 9 months pregnant, right? Many people would tell you, don't leave your child right before you give birth. And that was a terrifying time, I think. But I think it was the right time. You know, for me, it was a personal decision. My dad had me when he was a lot older. He provided for us, but he always worked 3 jobs and did everything that he could, but he wasn't around a lot. And for me, I arguably probably took the leap too late, if you ask me in retrospect, right? But leaving and jumping into this and building this was the best decision in retrospect for sure. But also at the time, a very terrifying one. So I can't sit here and tell you that everything was going great and like, let's go. In fact, TechVestor wasn't even a well thought out idea at the time. It was, okay, we're going to leave. We're going to spend time with baby, our first son, and go from there. It was a lot of blind faith and a lot of great people who joined us along the way to build a great company. I think that's the biggest advantage we have.
What was going on through your head, in your mind, as you're thinking and going through the steps on, I'm about to have my first child. I'm going to embark on this new journey and leave what you believed at that time to be like the security job of getting, your income stability, and all that that comes with having a typical working W-2 profession. What helped you get over that? And what were you thinking at that time that allowed you to feel confidence in what you were doing to pursue what you felt was the right thing for you and your family?
I think it was really twofold. I think the first thing was this confidence in people that were going to be a part of this journey. A confidence in myself and my abilities, sure, but also in our founding team, right? We just had an opportunity in front of us with the right people in what we believed was the right time to tackle this problem. And the second thing is the right time, right? This was 2020, I recall. 2021, I think, if I recall. Yeah, 2021. Zane was from 2021. And sorry, I don't know if you forget your kids' years.
No, sometimes. Yes.
He's just turning 2. That's why.
Yes, if he's 2, then he's the same age as my daughter. So she was born in 2020.
Yeah. So that for us was it was the right time. It was like the pandemic had accelerated this behavioral change of flexible living, remote work. And to me, I think that was a green light, right? Like this is where the world's going to be. And I think they're going to be pent up and want to move around. And I don't think you're going to be able to pull that back from them. So it was a really, really firm belief. And we had no data. I mean, honestly, it was one of probably the worst times to even start thinking about short-term rentals because the world was shut down for a few months. Right. So you're like, what's going to happen? Can you even do this? But for us, again, remember, we didn't start as a private equity firm. We started as a software product, right? How could we help people invest in this space with data and insights and what to buy and where to buy it? We just weren't solving the most painful problem they had, which was everything that came after identifying the property. Right. And that's really where they felt the most pain and where we saw our success really take on a rocket ship type of an approach.
So from that time when you left and you were starting to focus on this full time, what did you do? Like, what are some of the steps that you had to take in order to kind of flush out that idea? Because you said in the beginning that the idea wasn't really solidified at that time yet. You're still trying to figure it out. What did you do to kind of solidify and figure out what the game plan was and how you were going to grow this business, and how did it evolve over time?
I think we started with solving for who our avatar, or who we thought our best avatar was, which was ourselves. Right. We were like, okay, if I'm a business professional and I had this piece of software that could help me identify this best possible investment, I would be happy with this product and I would pay for it and use it. What we underestimated was, for us, we were thinking about financial freedom and passive income of buying 8, 10, 15 homes. Your average individual is thinking about buying one. And so even if we solve their problem once, then you lost them as a customer. And that's what's called churn in the software industry. And no one likes that. It's a bad thing. And so we were like, that can't work. So then we moved over to phase 2 and pivoted to a managed service. So we said, okay, we'll use our software to help you find and design this property, and we'll do all the work for you. And that was great. I think we did about 7 or 8 homes, I think, at the time. And the minimum was like $250,000, right? So it was, you had to have enough money to actually go through and do it. And then when we were listening to feedback, as you typically do early in a company, everyone was really happy with their own product, but they really wanted a piece of someone else's. Like the grass was green on the other side. I was like, wow, Eileen, your Airbnb is beautiful. Man, I wish I could use that sometime. And you're sitting there on a Zoom and everyone's explaining what a syndication is. They just have no idea that they're explaining what a syndication is, right? It's like this portfolio and everyone has shared ownership and shared use and shared everything. And so we came back to everyone about a week later and said, well, what if we just threw all this into a single portfolio and you were all pro rata owners of this portfolio? And you guys can use them, whatever. Like we'll have some governing rules, for lack of a better word. Overwhelming yes. And we were like, okay, like that's a lot easier to scale and manage, because now instead of like reporting individually and managing clients on a one-to-one, it's a one-to-many, right? And that's exactly what, like, say, multifamily is, right? It's one-to-many. And then we pivoted and announced that. And within 30 days, we had $7 million of interest. And we were like, that was kind of our first aha moment. Like, okay, I think we're onto something. And the next year after, or throughout that year, we'd go on to raise another 30. So landed around 37 million our first year, which was like, okay, I definitely think we're solving the right problem.
So as you were starting to raise it, what were some of the things that you did to get the word out and to let people know what you're doing so that they're aware of the opportunities that you're bringing to them?
Ironically, we went viral in a few places. I don't know where. I still don't know, but I'm very, very grateful for that. And I think we were I think at a time like Airbnb was such a hot commodity because everyone and their mom was trying to do it themselves. The issue was you had all these people who just were thinking it was super simple to do it. And for us, we had brought down our minimum. I think that was a huge deal that really got a lot of people. Our minimum went from $250,000 to $25,000, right? And so now it became accessible, right? 90% lower than where we had initially been. And people saw them and they're like, wow, I never thought I could even do this passively. So a lot of it was education. It was podcasts like this. It was content. It was events. It was dinners and referrals and, getting on as many calls and, hey, like, let me put this in front of you to see if this is something that you might be interested in. And honestly, a lot of people we just know from the industry, right? Both tech, real estate, et cetera, because again, we were solving for our own avatar, the busy professional. And we had spent years and years and years in these corporate environments with other high income earning professionals who wanted the same thing. They just didn't know that it was an option. So we had to educate them that it was even a thing. And I'm sure you face this every day with multifamily. People are like, I can own an apartment building, right? That seems incredibly terrifying, right? Like, how do I even get started on doing so? And then you break it down and they're like, oh, that makes sense. And that's when everyone's like, I can get into that.
So what's your next focus here?
Our focus today is on our second fund, as well as maintaining, stabilizing, and scaling Fund 1. So our second fund will be about a $50 million plus fund where we'll be implementing the same exact strategy, very similar locations, and really getting to a point of significant economies of scale. Like we'll cross 9 figures of AUM roughly either later this year or early next year. And I think that's a big target for institutional type capital who now can actually go and buy a portfolio of hundreds of short-term rentals that are stabilized, institutionally operated. And I think you're going to see a lot of excitement in the space because if you're an institution today, you don't have an option other than to go build it, but you don't want to build it. So someone else has to build it for you. And that's the problem we're solving. So that's really what we're focused on.
And how has real estate investing impacted your life, Sief?
I mean, I think going back to 9 days before birth, the big thing for me was taking that leap of freedom. I never could imagine that this is where TechFest would grow into, but having everything tied to your family and the values that you care about first and foremost and building everything around that, I think is really, really important. In fact, a lot of our ethos as a company is while we are an investment first, we're delivering incredible experiences for human beings all across the country. Every day, day in and day out, most of the people we serve are families. Even just a couple of weeks ago, we had a little girl in one of our Arizona homes right on the whiteboard. Her name was Brooklyn, and her grandpa Joe had been there, and they had this amazing time together. And those are incredible. And maybe those are things that get to me more often now that I'm a dad, right? But it's really amazing to find ways to drive profitability and investment returns and futures for investors, but at the same time, drive real-time experiences for humans. And I don't think anyone really predicted that would happen.
And what is the one thing that you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
Get started sooner. It's okay to lose money, make mistakes. God knows we've made plenty of hours, but get in there. Every mistake you think is the end of the world is such a small mistake 3 months later compared to everything that you learn. So get out and make those mistakes sooner.
And what is the one thing that sets the successful people apart in real estate investing?
Grit, no doubt. I think if you can't stomach ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and you don't have patience in real estate, you're in the wrong game. It is a dinosaur of an industry. It's what does the saying go? It's a get rich guaranteed game, but it is not a get rich quick game.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Sief, where can our listeners find out more about you and what you're doing in this space?
They can visit techfester.com. They can chat with our team or myself. We're on LinkedIn where we share a lot of our properties. And we'd be happy to educate you about short-term rentals and doing it passively.
Awesome. Sief, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate all of your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.